Hello, dear listeners of the Storytelling Podcast. My name is Tom. I'm 40 years old. I'm an entrepreneur, the owner of a small but successful company producing eco-friendly packaging. Today, I want to share with you a very personal, painful story that turned my whole life upside down. A story of weakness and passion, shame and remorse, broken trust and attempts at redemption. About how one wrong step can lead to the collapse of everything you've built and cherished for years. My wife Kira and I had lived together for 15 happy years. We got married right after college. We have two wonderful children, Lisa 10 and Danny 7. Kira is my high school sweetheart, the most beautiful, intelligent, and caring woman in the world. I am immensely grateful to fate that she chose me. Our family has always been considered ideal, strong, close-knit, exemplary. I was proud of the reliable home base Kira and I had created, how well we managed the children, our careers, and all the challenges in sync. But in the last couple of years, the first alarming notes began to creep into our family idol. Kira received several major promotions at her firm and was increasingly away on business trips to London, New York, or Tokyo. Now she spent most of her time on flights and in meetings. I knew how important her career was to her, and I supported my wife in every way, although I missed her terribly. Video calls and texting could not replace live communication, and the children also longed for their mother very much. I admit, I began to feel lonely and abandoned. Of course, I understood in my mind that Kira was doing this for our common good. But my heart could not accept that she was constantly somewhere far away, surrounded by successful people, vivid impressions, new perspectives. And I was just a housewife, mired in routine, endlessly changing diapers, cooking dinners, checking homework, driving the kids to clubs, as if my whole life had narrowed down to the limits of our house. At the same time, my own business also required a lot of time and effort, but Kira seemed to neither notice nor appreciate it. I started to be plagued by hurtful thoughts that my wife only needed me as a nanny and housekeeper, and in my soul, a black hole grew, a thirst for human warmth, understanding, admiration. A thirst to feel loved and desired again. As it happened, about 6 months ago, when Kira's business trips increased to 2 or 3 a month, her mother Julia moved in with us. She said she wanted to help with the kids, to make my life easier. My mother-in-law and I had always gotten along great. She often stayed with us and helped Kira around the house. Julia had buried her husband 5 years ago and had lived alone since then, but she had plenty of strength and energy. At 63, she looked amazing. Just as tall and slender as Kira, with a head of silvery hair styled in a fashionable cut, always impeccably dressed and well-groomed. She exuded the serenity and optimism of a person at peace with herself, and who knows exactly what she wants out of life. No wonder she got married 4 times. I must confess, in moments of despondency and melancholy, I even envied her inner freedom and lightness. At first, Julia and I hardly crossed paths. I was at work all day while she took care of the children and the house. But gradually, my mother-in-law began to show me the attention I so lacked from the eternally busy Kira. She would bring me coffee in bed, iron my shirts, cook my favorite dinner. I melted from her kindness and care. We began to have long conversations in the evenings on various topics, sharing book and movie novelties. Julia was keenly interested in my work affairs and problems, giving sound business advice, as she herself had once owned a flower shop. Next to her, I felt confident, strong, needed, the way I had long ceased to feel next to my wife. I didn't even notice how I began to look forward to our evening get-togethers, to admire Julia at dinner, to imagine how I would hug her, stroke her hair, inhale the subtle scent of her perfume. One evening, over a glass of wine, I caught her long, languid gaze and lost my head. It was as if my whole body had been pierced by an electric shock, something sweet caught in my chest, my cheeks flushed. Lord, I felt like a love-struck teenager. The flirting and touching became more and more frank and bold. We secretly corresponded when I was at work. While the children slept, we stole kisses in corners like naughty schoolchildren. But it hadn't gone beyond kisses and hugs yet. I felt guilty toward Kira, pushing sinful thoughts away from me, trying to keep myself in check. Although the desire to possess Julia was becoming more and more unbearable. One evening, when Kira was once again not at home, we were drinking wine on the veranda. Julia was telling some funny story, and I couldn't take my eyes off her lips and shining eyes. Without realizing how, I pulled her to me and kissed her long and hard, as if only in her was salvation from the tearing feeling of longing. Julia didn't even try to push me away. On the contrary, she ran her fingers through my hair, pressed herself against me with her whole body, responding to the kiss with no less ardor. Her breasts, stomach, thighs were driving me crazy even through her clothes. The dam of passion had burst. All the barriers built by a frightened mind had collapsed. How we ended up in the guest bedroom, I hardly remembered. Everything blurred into one crazy, chaotic, sensual whirlwind. Feverish kisses covering every millimeter of skin on which the moonlight from the window fell, clothes impatiently torn off each other, hot sobs and moans muffled by a pillow. Julia was the embodiment of passion and tenderness, submission and power. Like a muse, she guessed all my secret desires without words, playing on my feelings like on the strings of a harp. For her, I was ready to step into the abyss, where there was no past, no future, only the two of us, naked in soul before each other. I was going crazy over her flexibility, over her satin skin, over her silky hair scattered across the pillow. Our bodies intertwined in a dance as old as the world, merging into one. I wanted to dissolve in her, to remain forever in this moment of true intimacy, where the whole world ceased to exist. Covering Julia with kisses, I tasted the salty flavor of her skin, heard the intermittent sighs and moans in which I imagined the music of the celestial spheres. This night was repeated again and again. We did it everywhere we could, in the bathroom, in the office, in the back seat of my car, where I would pick Julia up at lunchtime. But most often, in that ill-fated guest bedroom, which became our secret refuge, a witness to forbidden pleasures. I melted with happiness in Julia's embrace, drowned in her caresses and tenderness. With her, I felt young, irresistible, desirable again. It seemed that this woman had awakened in me a second wind, filled the gaping void in my heart. I worshipped her. I was madly in love with her. Julia became a breath of fresh air for me, a lifeline in the engulfing family routine. But I understood that our relationship was doomed, built on deceit and meanness, that sooner or later this sweet captivity would burst like a soap bubble, and then the hell of reckoning would begin. I must give Julia credit. She never once talked about me divorcing Kira, made no claims. She even hinted that we should stop before it was too late, but I didn't want to hear anything, breaking down again and again and coming to her like an addict for another dose. Passion blinded my eyes, completely knocking out common sense. On that fateful day exactly 3 months ago, Kira unexpectedly returned from her business trip a day early. Julia and I were so engrossed in each other in bed that we didn't hear the front door open. And then everything happened, like in a nightmare. A loud female scream, the sound of a breaking vase, the thud of a wedding ring on the floor. Kira stood frozen in the doorway, staring at us with eyes wide with shock and pain. I will never forget that expression, a mixture of horror, disgust, and disbelief that distorted her white face. Julia hastily pulled the blanket over her chest, trying to mutter something in her defense. I feverishly searched for my underpants scattered on the floor. Unable to utter a word, Kira turned around and flew out of the room like a bullet, slamming the door loudly. A minute later, I heard the screech of her car tires peeling out. I ran outside, trying to catch up with Kira, begging her to stop and talk, but to no avail. She didn't want to listen to me at all. Kira silently gathered her things, took the frightened children hiding in corners, and left to stay with her sister. At that moment, I wanted to sink through the floor, to burn with shame, to dissolve into oblivion. I had destroyed our marriage, betrayed the woman who loved and trusted me, trampled our happiness. And for what? A momentary whim, a physical weakness, the illusion of regained youth. I was choking on tears of remorse mixed with rage at myself, a despicable, lustful dog. I wanted to howl like a wounded animal, to smash everything around me. Julia also packed her suitcases and left that same evening. She said she would never return to this house and our lives again. We both understood that we had done something irreparable, that our fleeting romance, which had flared up brightly and recklessly, had ruined several lives at once. Since then, my life seems to have stopped. Everything I had built over the years, family, friends' respect, plans for the future, had shattered to pieces in an instant. Kira filed for divorce and forbade me to see the children. Friends turned away from me. Even my father, who usually supported me in everything, said that I was the last scoundrel, and he was ashamed to have such a son. In his place, he would have put a bullet in his head. I immersed myself in work, spending days on end at the office. It was easier that way, not to think, not to remember, not to analyze what had led me to ruin. But at night I was overwhelmed by such a sharp longing for Kira, for the children's voices, for our common past, that I wanted to climb the walls. I was consumed by guilt, suffocating with self-loathing. The only thing that saved me from insanity was alcohol. A bottle of whiskey at night became my last refuge, helping me forget, at least for a while, in a dreamless, unconscious sleep. After a couple of weeks of living like this, I realized I couldn't take it anymore. I had to change something, fight, look for a way out, not drown my problems in vodka. For the sake of the children, for the sake of the ghostly chance of forgiveness, I had to try to glue together the shards of what I had destroyed. I made an appointment with a family therapist. For the first time in my life, I opened up to a stranger, turning my soul inside out. I talked about my insecurity, my fear of losing control over my own life, about the gnawing sense of inadequacy next to a successful wife. I dug into myself, trying to find the roots of my betrayal, and I realized that cheating with Julia had become a kind of escape, a cowardly attempt to hide from problems and responsibilities. A cure for the fear of not living up to the inflated bar of the perfect family man behind which I had trapped myself. Kira and I haven't talked to each other once yet. She wouldn't pick up the phone, ignored messages. I understood that she had every right to hate me and no longer want to know me, but I wasn't going to give up either. I wrote my wife a long 15-page penitential letter, telling everything that had happened, everything I had been through, without holding back. I didn't make excuses. I didn't shift the blame onto her. I repented, begged for forgiveness, swore that I would do everything to earn another chance, even if it took my whole life. I sent the letter by mail and waited. A week later, Kira answered the call for the first time. Dryly, through clenched teeth, she hissed that she had read the message. She agreed to meet, but warned me. If I mentioned my feelings with a single word or hinted at the possibility of starting over, our communication would be over. She would never be able to trust me again. This meeting was one of the most difficult in my life. Kira wanted to know everything: how long the affair had been going on, what Julie and I had talked about, what we had done, whether I had felt pangs of conscience. Every word of hers struck me in the face, ripping open barely healed wounds. But I understood. She needed to speak out, to pour out the pain. Otherwise, it would burn from the inside, poisoning her existence. After letting me have my say, Kira uttered something that made my blood run cold. On the day she caught Julie and me, she had been 2 months pregnant, and because of the stress, she had had a miscarriage. I realized that I had not only broken her heart, I had killed our child. What could I say at that moment? No apologies will undo what has been done. The act has no statute of limitations. It cannot be forgotten or erased from memory. All I could do was give Kira time. To let me back in was her choice, which I could hardly hope for. Nodding silently, she grabbed her coat and left, leaving me standing on the street with burning cheeks of shame. 3 months have passed since that meeting. We are trying to establish some semblance of communication for the sake of the children. Kira has allowed me to see them on weekends, to take them to movies and parks. But every time, the little ones look at me with apprehension and distrust, as if at an evil stranger who stole their daddy. It hurts me that I was so weak, that I didn't resist temptation and my own demons, that the seed of discord I have sown will long bear bitter fruit. Julia has disappeared from our lives without a trace. She went somewhere to Europe, changed her phone numbers. We both understood that continuing or even maintaining a relationship after what happened was unthinkable. The price of the mistake was too high. Although at first I missed her terribly, longed for our illusory closeness, the suddenly overwhelming loneliness seemed unbearable. Now the pain has dulled, but the guilt won't let go. Every night I fall asleep with the thought of how low I have fallen. In my dreams I see Kira's eyes at that fateful moment, full of pain, disappointment, and contempt. That look haunts me, reminding me that I betrayed what was most precious: love, trust, the very life that could have been, but which I destroyed with my own hands. Nevertheless, we must not give up. If Kira deems me worthy of a second chance, I will do everything not to miss it. I will prove day after day with deeds, not empty words, that I am capable of becoming her reliable support again. A father the children will be proud of, that I will never again succumb to a momentary whim. Even if she cannot forgive me completely, I will still remain true to my promises. For the sake of the memory of our marriage, for the sake of our children's future. I want to address all those whose relationships are now going through a crisis, who, like me, are standing on the edge of the abyss, luring themselves with forbidden fruit. Stop, think twice before cutting from the shoulder. A fleeting infatuation, a passion that flares up on the side, is not a reason to cross out everything that you have built together with your loved one for years. Don't make an irreparable foolishness in the heat of the moment. It is better to talk frankly. Look for the root of the problems together. Work on the relationship if it is dear to you. Keep your heart open for dialogue and your mind cold for temptations. Marital infidelity is not a harmless way to have fun on the side, to shake things up and return to the family as if nothing had happened. It is always pain and humiliation for the one who believed in your decency. The echoes of betrayal, the echoes of lies will long ring in the ears and heart, even if you are forgiven. Believe me, the realization of your own meanness, the disappointment in yourself will poison your existence far more than the momentary hardships of family life. After all, you can't make peace with the inner traitor. When it seems to you that your marriage is cracking at the seams, that tenderness has faded, that your partner has become a stranger, remember what you once loved each other for. Understand whether you are ready to live the rest of your life without this person. What is on the other side of the scale? Guilt, loneliness, contempt of loved ones, tears of children. Be honest with yourself and your loved ones. It is better to build happiness together than to destroy it in the pursuit of questionable pleasures. Thank you for listening to my confession. It was not easy, stirring up unhealed wounds, but I believe that the experience of each of us, even the most bitter, can serve as a lesson to others. Give strength to resist weaknesses, to stay on the path of honor and fidelity. Remember, the strongest bonds are forged not from passion, but from forgiveness, mutual support, and acceptance. Be able to see this simple truth in time behind the veil of deceptive pleasures. Love those around you. Listen to the voice of reason, and do not lose your head. Take care of your loved ones. Be happy, and do not repeat my mistakes. Yes, the story is definitely interesting and tragic at the same time. You never know how life will turn out. We have many similar to this, and at the same time different interesting stories on our storytelling podcast channel. So subscribe so you don't miss new stories. And also don't forget to like, share with your friends, and comment on what you liked in the stories. See you soon.